Evacuation order stands, Commander. Those cubs have already killed 3 containment specialists, and they're not responding to any Virixian protocols. Station Commander Kyle Thas slammed his primary manipulator against the tactical display, sending ripples of bioluminescence across his carapace. On the screen, 2 juvenile according to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Virixian predators, each the size of Earth tigers but exponentially more lethal, tore through the diplomatic quarters' reinforcement barriers like tissue paper. Ambassador Ziara stood beside him, all 4 of her arms trembling in a display of distress that transcended cultural boundaries. "Commander, you don't understand." Zara's translator rendered her clicks and whistles into urgent standard. "These are not simple animals. They are my offspring, future diplomatic heirs. If they're harmed, the Virixian Conclave will consider it an act of war against our bloodline. And if they kill anyone else, Ambassador, we'll have an interspecies incident that makes war look preferable." Kalthas gestured at the security feed where Station Master Trainer Vex Thul, brought in at catastrophic expense from the Virixian homeworld, lay unconscious against a wall, his ceremonial training staff broken in 3 pieces. Your own expert couldn't get within 10 meters of them. "Because they're in blood rage state." Zara's voice cracked through the translator. "It's impossible to stop without sedation, and the sedatives aren't working." "Nothing works. They should have bonded to Vex Thul immediately. He carries the alpha pheromone markers, the dominance frequencies. This has never happened in 10,000 years of Virixian cub rearing." The cubs screamed, a sound that made every species' instincts scream apex predator, and demolished another section of decorative wall plating. Through the station's corridors, Kyle Thas could hear the evacuation alerts cycling in 14 different languages. The diplomatic quarter, usually a showcase of interspecies cooperation, had become a war zone in under 20 minutes. "Sir, the Galactic Council is demanding an explanation." His communications officer's tendrils quivered with stress. "They're threatening to suspend station operations if we can't contain a basic wildlife incident." "Basic?" Kalthas felt his exoskeleton flush with rage heat. "These cubs are genetically engineered apex predators. Their bite force can crack starship hull plating. There is nothing basic about—" "Oh wow, nobody told me we were doing an emergency drill today." Every being in the command center spun toward the voice. Emma Johnson stood in the doorway, holding a datapad and a coffee cup, her station veterinary assistant uniform rumpled like she'd just woken up from a nap. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and she had what Kael'thas had learned was called a smile on her face, though he'd never quite understood the human expression. "Johnson, what are you doing here?" Kael'thas demanded. "This sector is under evacuation." "Yeah, I got the alert, but I was checking the cub intake forms and noticed we never did the standard wellness examination." Emma tapped her datapad. "The Virixian delegation was supposed to bring them by medical 3 days ago. I was just coming to remind someone before I forgot again." Zara made a sound that the translator didn't even attempt to render. "The human needs to leave. Immediately. My cubs will tear her apart in seconds." "Sir, she's moving toward the containment breach." The security officer's voice pitched with alarm. On the main display, Emma had walked right past the command center and into the diplomatic quarters' main corridor. The cubs, who had been in the middle of destroying a ceremonial meditation fountain, froze. Not gradually, not with the slow recognition of a threat. They simply stopped, mid-motion, like someone had pressed pause on their nervous systems. Emma looked down at her datapad, then up at the cubs. "Hey there, babies. You guys are making quite the mess, huh?" The larger cub, the one that had broken Vex Thul's arm in 3 places, lowered its head. Its spine ridge, which had been fully extended in rage display mode, flattened against its back. The smaller cub made a sound Kael'thas had never heard from a Virixian, a soft, inquiring chirp. That's impossible," Zara whispered. "They're submitting. To a non-Virixian. To prey. Emma crouched down, making herself smaller, and held out one hand. Come here, sweetie. Let's get you two back where you're supposed to be, okay? I bet you're just scared and confused. The larger cub, apex predator, diplomatic heir, genetically engineered killing machine, walked over to Emma Johnson and pressed its massive head into her palm. The command center erupted in chaos. Officers shouting into communicators. Zara making sounds of distress that transcended translation. Vex Thul, who had just regained consciousness, staring at the screen with all three of his eyes dilated in shock. Kael'thas could only watch as the human, who moments ago had been worried about paperwork, sat down on the floor next to creatures that had killed 3 trained specialists. The cubs arranged themselves on either side of her, their massive bodies curled in positions of complete trust. Good babies, Emma said softly, scratching behind one cub's auditory ridge. Such good babies, yeah you are. The cub's purring vibrated through the station's superstructure. Commander, his security chief said quietly. What? What do we do? Kael'thas had commanded stations through pirate raids, diplomatic crises, and even a brief skirmish with an uncontacted species. He had contingency protocols for 47 different types of emergencies. None of them covered this. I have absolutely no idea, he admitted, watching Emma Johnson casually pet 2 apex predators while they melted into docile submission. Someone get me xenobiology, and psychology, and possibly theology, because I think we're witnessing something that breaks every law we understand about predator behavioral biology. On the screen, Emma pulled out her communicator with her free hand, the other still scratching a cub's head, and called someone. Hey, Sarah? Yeah, I'm gonna be late for lunch. I found the cubs that everyone's been freaking out about. They're sweet, just needed someone to be calm around them. What? No, I didn't know about the evacuation order. Why would... Commander, are you serious? They're just babies. Just babies, Kael'thas thought numbly. Just babies that had killed 3 beings and resisted every form of Virixian behavioral control. Just babies that were now rolling onto their backs so a human could rub their stomachs. Get me every expert we have on human psychology, he said finally. I need to understand what we're dealing with. You think the human is controlling them somehow? His security chief asked. No. Kael'thas watched Emma laugh as one of the cubs licked her face with a tongue that could strip flesh from bone. I think the human has no idea she's doing anything unusual at all, and that terrifies me more than any weapon in the galaxy. Ambassador Zara, perhaps you could explain to me why we're still standing here watching instead of securing the situation. Kael'thas kept his voice level, though every instinct screamed that what he was witnessing violated fundamental principles of xenobiology. Zara hadn't moved from her position in front of the main display. All 4 of her arms hung limply at her sides. Commander, you don't understand what you're seeing. My cubs, Virixian cubs in general, are biologically programmed to recognize and submit only to alpha predators of their own species. It's encoded in our DNA. 10 million years of evolution. They should be attacking her, not... She gestured helplessly at the screen where Emma was now examining one cub's ear with professional interest. Not that. Master Vex Thul is conscious again, the medical officer reported. He's demanding to know what's happening. Patch him through, Kael'thas ordered. The Virixian trainer's image appeared on a secondary screen, his facial ridges still flushed with pain-stressed colors. Commander, you must remove that human immediately. The cubs may be in temporary shock, but when they recover, they will tear her to pieces. I've trained diplomatic heirs for 40 cycles. This calm state never lasts. You have perhaps 2 minutes before they re-enter blood rage. Emma, still visible on the main screen, stood up and brushed off her uniform. Okay, babies, let's get you back home, yeah? She started walking toward the containment area. The cubs followed her like, as Kael'thas had learned from human cultural databases, puppies. She's moving them, Zara breathed. She's just walking, and they're following. Impossible, Vex Thul stated flatly. They require dominance displays, alpha pheromone assertion, and sonic frequency commands. You cannot simply ask them to... Emma stopped and turned around. One of the cubs had paused to investigate a piece of broken fountain. "Hey, sweetie, leave that alone. Come on now." She patted her leg twice. The cub abandoned the debris immediately and trotted to her side. Vexthul's mouth opened and closed without sound. "Try it," Zara said suddenly. "Vexthul, give them a command. Use your training." The master trainer's expression showed what Kael'thas recognized as deep reluctance, but he activated his suit's external speakers. His voice emerged in the complex harmonics of Virixian authority speech, layered with subsonic frequencies that made Kael'thas's exoskeleton ache in sympathy. "Cubs, attend!" Both cubs' heads whipped toward the sound. Their spine ridges extended partially. The larger one bared its teeth and released a warning growl that made the station's hull resonate. Emma looked confused. "Whoa, hey, it's okay." She placed a hand on the larger cub's head. "He's not going to hurt you." The cub's aggression display stopped immediately. It leaned into Emma's touch, and the warning growl transformed into that impossible purring sound. "By the conclave," Zara whispered. She just overrode a direct challenge response. "That's... Vexthul, tell me that's possible." "It's not." The master trainer looked like he was watching his entire worldview collapse in real time. "I have documentation going back 3,000 years. Cubs in blood rage state cannot be calmed by non-Virixians. They especially cannot be calmed by beings they perceive as prey. And humans, no offense intended, register on every predator instinct scale as optimal prey species. Soft, slow, no natural defenses. The cubs should want to hunt her." "Well, they clearly don't," Kael'thas observed as Emma resumed walking, now with both cubs pressed against her sides. She was humming something, a human musical expression, and the cubs' movements had synchronized to her pace. "Commander, security teams are requesting permission to escort the human." His security chief looked uncertain. "Though, I'm not sure what we'd do if the cubs object to our presence." "Negative. Nobody approaches until we understand the situation better." Kael'thas opened a channel to Emma. "Ms. Johnson, this is Commander Kael'thas. Are you aware that you're currently handling 2 extremely dangerous predators?" Emma's voice came back cheerful and unconcerned. "Oh, hey, Commander. Yeah, someone mentioned something about that. But look at them. They're just scared babies. Whoever was handling them before must have been doing something wrong because they're total sweethearts once you're calm around them." "Scared?" Zara moved closer to the screen. "My cubs are apex predators. They don't experience fear. It was bred out of our species during the dominance wars." "Really? Because this one..." Emma gestured to the smaller cub. "Keeps making this little chirping sound and pressing against me whenever there's a loud noise. And the big one startles every time someone talks on the intercom. That's fear behavior. Basic animal psychology." Vexthul made a sound like choking. The chirping is a dominance call. The pressing is preparation for attack positioning. She's completely misreading." The smaller cub chirped again and literally tried to climb into Emma's arms. She staggered under the weight. The cub had to mass at least 60 kilograms, but managed to steady herself and wrapped her arms around it. "There you go, baby. I've got you. Nothing's going to hurt you." The cub buried its face in her shoulder. Its spine ridge lay completely flat, the Virixian signal for absolute trust and submission. "That display," Zara said slowly, "only occurs between cub and parent. Only when the parent has proven themselves worthy through ritual combat and dominance assertion. Only after weeks of bonding. She's known them for 5 minutes. Ambassador, with respect, I think your species might have some misconceptions about your own cub's psychology." Kael'thas watched Emma successfully maneuver both cubs toward their containment area, still somehow managing to hold her coffee cup. "Ms. Johnson, can you tell us what you're doing? What technique you're using?" "Technique?" Emma laughed, that strange human expression of amusement. "I'm not doing anything special. I worked with difficult dogs back on Earth. Had this one pit bull rescue that everyone said was impossible to handle, super aggressive, had been in fights, the whole thing. Turned out she just needed someone to be patient and calm with her. Animals pick up on your energy, you know? If you're scared or aggressive, they respond to that. If you're chill, they chill. She's comparing my diplomatic airs to Earth canines, Zara said faintly. And apparently the comparison is working, Kael'thas pointed out. Vexthul, in your professional opinion, how is this possible? The master trainer was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that transcended translation. Commander, in 40 cycles of training, I have studied every aspect of Virixian cub behavioral psychology. I have written 3 books on the subject. I hold the highest certification in my field. And I have absolutely no idea what I'm watching. Everything I know says this should be impossible. Yet there is a human, a prey species human, successfully managing cubs that I couldn't approach without full protective gear and dominance pheromone enhancers. On screen, Emma had reached the containment area entrance. Okay, babies, inside we go. Come on, I'll get you some food once we're in there. I bet you're hungry, huh? Both cubs walked calmly through the door that had barely contained them an hour ago. She's going in with them, the security chief said urgently. Should we? Nobody moves, Kael'thas ordered. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. Emma settled onto the floor of the containment area, and both cubs arranged themselves around her, their massive heads resting on her legs. She pulled out her datapad and started making notes with one hand while scratching behind a cub's ear with the other. Well, she said into her comm, I'm gonna need to run a full behavioral assessment, but preliminary observation suggests these two have been subjected to some kind of stress-based training that's completely wrong for their temperament. They're social pack animals, not solitary dominance hierarchy types. You can see it in how they position themselves for mutual comfort and how they respond to calm social cues rather than aggressive displays. Vexthul's image flickered with color changes that indicated deep distress. That assessment contradicts 10,000 years of Virixian understanding of our own species. Yeah, well, Emma shrugged, still petting the cubs who looked more relaxed than Zara had ever seen any cub look. Sometimes you can be too close to something to see it clearly. Happens all the time in animal behavior studies. No offense intended. Kael'thas looked at Ambassador Zara, whose arms were trembling again, though whether from shock, fear, or something else entirely, he couldn't tell. Commander, Zara said quietly, I need to contact the Conclave immediately. If what this human is suggesting is true, if we've been fundamentally wrong about our own cubs for our entire recorded history, the implications are… She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. Extensive? Kael'thas suggested. Civilization-altering, Zara corrected. Excuse me, I need to make some calls. As the ambassador left the command center, Kael'thas turned back to the screen where Emma Johnson, veterinary assistant, sat peacefully with 2 of the most dangerous predators in known space sleeping contentedly against her. Someone, he said to no one in particular, please tell me we have protocols for this. The silence from his staff was answer enough. Within 30 minutes, the station's main conference room had filled with every expert Kael'thas could summon on short notice. Dr. Zhilar, the station's chief xenobiologist, stood at the head of the table, manipulating a holographic display that showed Emma's biosigns alongside the cub's stress indicators. It makes no sense, Zhilar said, his frustration evident in the way his sensory stalks kept coiling and uncoiling. Look at this data. The cub's cortisol analogs, their stress hormones, dropped by 70% within 3 minutes of the human's arrival. Their aggression pheromones are at baseline levels. They're exhibiting every marker of pack bonding behavior with a species they should instinctively recognize as prey. Could it be pheromonal? Suggested Dr. Lirana, the station's comparative psychologist. Perhaps humans emit something that mimics Virixian parental markers. Already tested. Zhilar pulled up another display. Human pheromone profiles are Nothing like Virixian biochemistry. If anything, humans should smell like food to the cubs. Kyle Thas watched the live feed where Emma had convinced the cubs to eat from standard feeding bowls. Something Zara had quietly mentioned usually required weeks of conditioning. What about behavioral mimicry? Could she be unconsciously performing Virixian pack gestures? Absolutely not. Vex Thul had joined via remote link, his image still showing pain-stress colors. I've analyzed every movement she's made. Nothing corresponds to our dominance displays, submission rituals, or pack bonding ceremonies. She's using completely novel behavioral patterns, and somehow the cubs are responding as if they're instinctive. On screen, one of the cubs knocked over its water bowl. Emma's voice came through clearly. "Hey, no, bad. We don't make messes on purpose." The cub, diplomatic air, apex predator, creature of instinct, lowered its head in what looked remarkably like shame. "She just disciplined it," Zara said from her position by the wall. She'd returned from contacting the conclave looking shaken. She gave it a time-out for minor misbehavior, and it accepted the correction. Do you understand what that means? Virixian cubs don't accept correction. They respond only to dominance assertions backed by the threat of force. The conclave's response, Kael'thas asked. They think I've suffered a stress-induced break from reality. Zara's translator couldn't quite capture the bitterness in her voice. I'm sending them the live feed now. They'll see for themselves. Emma appeared on another screen, having called into the meeting. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but the cubs are getting bored. Do you guys have any enrichment toys, like puzzle feeders or something? They're really smart, and they need mental stimulation. Enrichment toys? Vex Thul repeated the words like they were from an alien language. Cubs are provided dominance challenges and combat training. Mental stimulation would reduce their aggressive edge. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. Emma shifted as one of the cubs pushed its head under her hand, demanding attention. You're treating them like soldiers when they're basically toddlers. They need play, not combat. Social interaction, not isolation. Positive reinforcement, not dominance battles. The room fell silent. Miss Johnson, Zilar said carefully, are you suggesting that the Virixian species has been fundamentally misunderstanding their own developmental psychology for their entire civilization? I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, Emma laughed. But yeah, basically. Look, I get it. Sometimes when you're too close to something, you miss the obvious stuff. Happens in every field. You guys just need to step back and look at what the cubs actually need, not what you think they should need based on adult behavior. Zara made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. The human veterinary assistant is giving us a lecture on our own species child-rearing practices. And she's right, Vex Thul said quietly. Ancestors forgive me. But she's right. I'm watching cubs display behaviors I've never seen in 40 cycles of training. Contentment, playfulness, trust. We've been so focused on creating warriors that we forgot their children first. Kael'thas watched Emma pull out what looked like a twisted piece of rope and play tug-of-war with a cub that could bite through starship plating. The cub was gentle with her, careful not to hurt her fragile human body. Someone, he said, start working on new protocols, because I think we just discovered that humans might understand everyone's children better than we understand our own. On screen, Emma tied the rope into a knot and threw it. Both cubs raced after it, playing together in a way that Virixian behavioral science said was impossible for cubs in their developmental stage. The experts began to argue about implications. Zara contacted the conclave again. Vex Thul started drafting a complete revision of his life's work. And Emma Johnson just kept playing with the cubs, completely unaware that she'd just invalidated 10,000 years of Virixian cultural practices with nothing more than patience and a kind voice. 2 hours later, the Virixian Conclave's High Council appeared on the main display, their collective presence representing the highest authority in Virixian society. Zara stood at attention, all forearms rigid with formal protocol. Ambassador Zara, the council matriarch's voice carried millennia of authority. We have reviewed the footage. Explain what we're witnessing. Matriarch, I present Emma Johnson, human veterinary assistant, who has successfully managed my cubs using techniques that contradict everything we know about our own species. Emma waved from the containment area, still sitting on the floor with both cubs draped across her lap. Hi, sorry, can't really stand up right now. These two are sleeping and I don't want to wake them. The matriarch's expression, readable even across species lines, showed profound confusion. The cubs are sleeping? In the presence of a non-Virixian? Voluntarily? Well, yeah, they were exhausted. All that adrenaline from being scared, then the play session, they just needed a nap. Emma gently stroked the larger cub's spine ridge. They'll probably sleep for a couple hours. Growing babies need lots of rest. Scared, the matriarch repeated. You believe our cubs experience fear? Of course they do. They're not adults yet. Their brains are still developing, their social structures aren't fully formed, and they're in an unfamiliar environment away from their parent. That's terrifying for any young social animal. Vex Thule stepped forward, his colors showing formal submission. Matriarch, I must confirm the human's assessment. Everything I've witnessed today suggests our fundamental approach to cub development has been incorrect. We've been using dominance and aggression to train beings who need empathy and patience. This is not possible, another council member interjected. Our methods have produced warriors and diplomats for 10,000 years. And how many cubs failed the training? Emma asked quietly. How many didn't make it to adulthood because they couldn't handle the stress? How many grew up functional but emotionally scarred? The council chamber fell silent. Zara's arms trembled. Matriarch, I must confess something. I have always felt disconnected from my cubs. I attributed it to proper Virixian parenting, maintaining dominance distance, but watching the human interact with them, seeing them respond with trust and affection, I realize I've never truly bonded with my own offspring. None of us have. The larger cub stirred in its sleep, made a small sound of distress. Emma immediately hummed softly, and the cub settled back into peaceful rest. The human achieved in hours what our species has failed to do in millennia, the matriarch said slowly. She created a genuine bond, not through dominance, through compassion. So, Emma said, adjusting her position carefully to avoid disturbing the cubs. Does this mean I can write up some new care guidelines? Because honestly, these babies just need what all kids need: love, patience, and someone who listens to them. The matriarch's expression shifted into something that might have been wonder. Miss Johnson, the Virixian Conclave would be honored if you would help us relearn how to raise our own children. Sure, I can do that. Emma smiled. Right after nap time, though. These two need their rest. 3 days later, Kael'thas reviewed the incident reports with something approaching disbelief. Station protocols now included human-animal behavior consultation as standard procedure for all xenobiological incidents. The Virixian government had requested Emma visit their homeworld to train an entire generation of cub handlers in compassionate care techniques. 7 other species had filed requests for her consultation on their own unsolvable animal management issues. And Emma had responded to all of it by asking if she could bring her cat. Commander, the human is leaving the cub's containment area, his security chief reported. On screen, Emma gave each cub a final scratch behind the ears. Okay, babies, your mom's coming to pick you up in an hour. Be good for her, okay? Remember what we practiced: gentle touches, listening voices. Both cubs chirped in acknowledgement, a sound of pure contentment. Zara stood nearby, taking notes on a datapad, learning how to bond with her own children from a human who'd simply treated them with kindness. Emma walked out humming, pulling out her communicator. Hey, Sarah, you still want to grab lunch? Yeah, the cubs are fine now. Just needed someone to actually be nice to them. What? No, I'm not famous. I just did my job. Kael'thas watched her disappear down the corridor, then turned to his staff. Make a note, he said quietly. Humans don't conquer through force. They conquer through empathy, and that might make them the most dangerous species we've ever encountered.